Hello, Paul Pounds. So I'm sure some of you have spotted my little side series called Into the Occult, where I look at some of my favourite and most fascinating occult cases that were reported in the media. And I did a little Paul Pound chat about why I find them so fascinating and stuff. And I thought I was been looking through my bookshelves, and I thought, ooh, maybe a little top five of late 60s, early 70s sleazy occult paperbacks, and some of the best and most favourite ones in my collection. So let's kick off. At number 5 is Satanism and Witchcraft by Jules Michelet. Now I'm quite unfair to this book for putting it into this list, because it's actually a really good and well researched book about kind of witchcraft, occultism and religion from the 16 and 1700s. It's a really good book, but it's a sleazy cover designed to cash in on the whole occult boom, and there's a couple of really good appendixes. One of which is an essay called "Satan and Jesus: Is a Reconciliation Possible?" Which, yeah, let's do it. Lockdown's been tough on us all and made us all rethink our lives a little bit. So maybe it's time for those boys to bury the hatchet and just crack on. The pubs will be open again soon. Do some shots. Just see where the night takes you. Next up, at number 4, is Black Magic Today by June Johns, which is great. So this one is okay, a lot of these are going to be a little bit spicy, because from the media point of view and the cash-in point of view, it was spicy antics in the suburbs, but surrounded by men in robes that were chanting weird things. So it's a great New English Library book. But I mean, you get so that far through it, that's the amount that you've read. We get to, of course, not all black magic parties are sexual orgies and excuses for sadism. Some are genuinely concerned with trying to make events bend for the magician and his followers. So you've got that much of that. So not all magic is about sexual sadism, just that much. And then that thin little sliver of book is other things that may occur. It's a fabulous book. Next up is a really odd one. It's by Paul Hewson, and it's called Mastering Witchcraft. Obviously, it's got something spicy on the cover. So this is like a really weird grimoire. It's not like a history or an exposé. It's an actual practical workbook. And it's very, very odd, because it doesn't fit into any esoteric, pagan or Wiccan set of any kind of structure that is part of an organised faith. It's just a whole bunch of crazy nonsense. So from the back, part of the blurb on the back says, "From reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards through all the satanic rituals and practices, Paul Hewson carefully explains the details of witchcraft." And then it goes on to say he lists the various herbs and incenses employed in witchcraft and tells you how to use them. And he gives the procedure for casting the evil eye. It's an absolute corker, and it's a mad read. So, in at number 2 is a real favourite of mine. Alexander Peters' The Devil in the Suburbs. Now I really like this one, because it takes a lot of the news reports, the newspaper reports that I refer to in my Into the Occult series, and essentially collates them all into a mad book about sex and Satanism. But it's from the point of view that these people are all around you in suburbia. It's not just swingers anymore with the pampas grass. It's swingers and Satan. Oh, that would have been a better title for this book, wouldn't it? Swingers and Satan. I'd buy that. But if we read from the blurb on the back, it says, "There is complete abandon under the watchful eyes of the horned devil, a revival of the pagan tradition of glorifying evil for debased personal satisfaction." And this is my favourite bit. This is like the essence of the book. "Look at the man sitting opposite you in the railway carriage. Look at the faces who pass in the street. Look at your next-door neighbours. They could be the brothers and sisters of midnight." So yeah, it's spicy antics and devil worship in the suburbs, which I really like. Not engaging in. I'm far too old for that. I just like reading about it. And my favourite book from that period, which I absolutely adore, is Devil Worship in Britain by A.V. Selwood and Peter Haining. I'm sure you've all heard of Peter Haining, famous anthologist, and A.V. Selwood seems to have written some books about war, and that's about all I can find, really. But this is such a good book. I'm going to read you a little bit from it. So he's described this whole Black Mass thing. "A peep into history, the Moloch worshippers of ancient Carthage unfortunately know. Incredible though it may seem, this perverted orgy took place as recently as 1961. Still more incredibly, it took place in Britain, within a mile or so of one of the West Country's most sophisticated holiday haunts. The Virgin was a convicted prostitute, the High Priest her exploiter. The male participants were practitioners, or seem to have thought they were, of what is too often loosely called black magic. Some, the more positive, would call it Satanism." So what happens in this book is Mr. Haining and Mr. Selwood investigate a lot of the more infamous news reports, such as the vandalism at Clophill and things like that, and then go off and find people to interview about cults and covens and all lovely things like that. And it's kind of like a weird road movie in a book, where they head off and are almost like disgusted by the sexual aspect of it all, but also they dwell on it an awful lot. An awful lot. Mind you, all these books do. But what can you do? So yeah, that's my top 5 sleazy 60s and 70s occult paperbacks. I have got 2 honourable mentions, though, that I did want to just drop in. First off is The Black Art by Rollo Ahmed. This isn't sleazy. This is fascinating and well researched, but a more studious look at the kind of occult explosion of that era, which you can usually find, because there's a few different editions. That Arrow one is my favourite cover, but it's worth picking up if you can find it. There was also, I think, a Senate reprint in the late in the 90s. Those kind of Senate reprinted a lot of Lewis Spence type stuff in paperback, and they were in cheap bookshops like the Works and stuff. They're worth checking out. There's some interesting ones. And then this wasn't included because it does have some fiction in. This is part of the Dennis Wheatley Library of the Occult, Satanism and Witches. But it's got some really cool and interesting stuff in it. It's got an art. It obviously it's quite old, but written by Cotton Mather, who tried the witches at Salem about. It's actually called The Trials of the New England Witches. There's a lot of kind of Elliot O'Donnell stuff and a couple of stories. But then there's some really good articles at the end by Dennis Wheatley about the dangers of black magic and the supernatural and stuff. So that's it's creeping up a little bit, but I think you can still find it fairly cheap. So yeah, top 5 and a couple of honourable mentions. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you're all staying safe and well, and I'll see you in the next video.